I'm going to start up here, and then pretty soon I'm going to be right here in front of you students, going to teach you one last time. West Jefferson School Board 253, I appreciate all you've done for me. Superintendent Richens, thank you. Mr. McDonald, thank you. Faculty and staff of West Jefferson High School, thank you. Valerie, my lovely wife, thanks. Mom and Dad, would you please stand? They brought me to my first day of school in Minot, North Dakota, a long, long time ago. It's pretty fitting, I think, that they're here for one of my last days of school. And most importantly, class of 2018, thank you so much for having me. Let me give you a little background on how I got this duty tonight. It was about 8 years ago, the graduating class of 2010, maybe 2011, asked me to speak at their graduation, and I did that. And several classes since then have asked me to speak at graduations, but I made a decision after my last speech at a graduation that the next time I would speak would be when I retire. And that's happening tonight. Clarion, the senior class president, gave me a letter from the senior class council. Each of them had signed it. It was very flattering. They expressed their gratitude and stuff like that for me being their teacher, and they asked me to speak. Well, I gathered that bunch together, Clarion, Chloe, Zane, all of you on that class council, and I said, give me a week because I'm considering some very important changes in my life. And if I do say yes to you, that means that I've also made a decision to retire. A week later, I gathered that same bunch of students together. We sat in my room, and I think I sobbed like a little baby, and I told them that I would speak. And that's the reason I'm here tonight. It'll be my last chance to teach in front of a captive audience. My graduation speech is going to be my last lecture. I actually stole the title from a professor from Carnegie Mellon University that has since passed away. He decided when he was diagnosed with cancer that he was going to try to leave some parting bits of wisdom to students and especially to his family. I'm not in that situation tonight, thank goodness, but I think it's fitting that the title of my graduation speech will be my last lecture. Kyler, where are you at? Kyler, kind of out of the blue one day in advanced biology class. It was one day when a lot of students were absent. We were just kind of hanging out. He asked a random question. He asked, hey, Coach, do you read many books? And I said, you know, I kind of read in spurts. Right now I'm in between books. I haven't had one in my hands for a while. And I asked him, what's his current read? And he's actually just finished the book titled The Last Lecture by Professor Pausch. So he knows exactly what I'm talking about here, my last lecture. Becca, are you here? Kyler's mom? Rebecca? Hey. So just to put in perspective a little bit what 32 years of education in one place means, Becca was in the class of 1992, I believe, and I taught her in class, and now she's here watching her son graduate from high school. That just puts into perspective a bit what 32 years in one place will do. Becca, I think it's a great thing for you to have Kyler read those books. He told me that you got it for him, that you, after you each read and then discuss what the book was about. I don't think a parent can do much better in terms of education of a child. Good work. Good to see you. So, here's what the plan is going to be tonight. I'm going to tell a few stories. I'm going to reminisce a little bit on my career. Hopefully, by the end, I can leave you with a few parting bits of wisdom. It's pretty easy nowadays, like Clarin said. You can look at the internet, you can download an entire graduation speech. You could probably make a video of it, dub your own words in and get away with that, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do something a little bit different with you. That's coming up in just a minute. So, seniors, a lot of parallels can be drawn between what's happening in your lives tonight and what's happening in my life. You know, of course, as graduates, you're going on to new exciting phases in your life. Things are not going to be the same. You're graduating from high school and moving on to college, to trade school. You may be leaving on an LDS mission soon. You may be entering the workforce. Doesn't matter. Your time at West Jefferson High School is over. Personally, exciting changes are occurring in my life too. I'm finally going to be a graduate from school. I've attended, I don't know, 50, 60 graduations, and I'll probably still attend some more, but I can consider this my graduation from high school, finally, also. You know, it's the natural order of things that we move on in our lives, and that's what's occurring for both of us. You know, but that's where the lines diverge. You're just beginning your adult lives, and I'm ending a career as an educator. So many of you in the audience have asked me, Sawicki, what are you going to do now? I stole my answer from a very dear friend of mine, Coach Bunce. When he retired, I know a lot of people asked him the same question, and this is how he would answer. Whatever in the hail I want, that's what I'm going to do. I know I'm going to catch up on a bunch of fishing. I'm going to pound some nails. I'm going to bother my two best new hunting buddies, Lucas and Preston McCulloch, when it's goose hunting time, when it's squirrel hunting time. I know Val's going to have a long list of things for me to do at home, but that's going to be my new life. That's what I'm about. How many of you recognize this whole thing? Enough about me. Class of 2018, this night is about you. If you were in my classroom at this point, you probably remember the drill. That front bank of lights would turn off. This old overhead would click on. Your notebooks would come out. And away we'd go with the day's lesson. Tonight's lesson is not going to be about chemistry. It's not going to be about physics. It's not going to be about anatomy. What I hope to do maybe is teach you just a little bit about life, since it's going to be my last opportunity to do that. I'm going to use some of your names in my lecture tonight. I don't do that to embarrass or to insult or anything like that. If I mention somebody's name in the audience, like Becca, I've already done, I do that to make this commencement a little bit more personal, so it doesn't just sound like somebody that you don't know up here speaking to you. Well, let me begin my last lecture. Remember when you were freshmen? I was the first teacher that so many of you saw when you entered high school. Now, some of you, as you entered high school, the first class, that you took was that physical science class that I teach to all freshmen. I remember Allie just the other day. Severe, where are you? Hey, Allie and I were talking, and she said, Coach, you were the first teacher I saw when I entered high school. And Allie, it was my pleasure seeing you in that 5th hour science class as you exit. Now, I took that responsibility pretty heavily as you entered high school. So I tried to make you as comfortable as you possibly could. I tried to make you feel welcome. And hopefully I had a chance to teach you a little bit of science in the meantime. But it's my belief, and it's a very firm belief of mine, that if you are comfortable in a place, that you feel safe in a place, if you feel nurtured in a place, that there's going to be some learning taking place. And not just for this class, But for everybody here that I had a chance of teaching, I hope that I accomplished that for you. It was my pleasure to meet and greet so many of you in the halls every single day when you came into the school. I hear from a lot of ex-students that part of their best part of their day was me sitting on the bench outside of my classroom. How you doing? How's the day? How are things? I hope I accomplished that for not just this class, but so many of you in the audience. As educators, we oftentimes get bogged down with the minutiae of our content areas. That's fancy language for we get so wrapped up in what we're trying to teach, we kind of forget about the big picture. Memorizing all of the amendments to the Constitution. Can you solve the quadratic equation? Do you know the names of 44 common elements and their symbols? Do you know the generals in the Civil War? That's the minutiae that I'm talking about. I used to be a teacher very similar to that, but here's what I realized a lot of years ago, that content knowledge is, of course, important. You couldn't consider yourself a graduate from high school unless you had some of that content knowledge. But believe it or not, I also figured out that I could use that content knowledge to also try to teach some lessons that were a little bit deeper than the amendments to the Constitution, or the quadratic equation, or the names of elements and their symbols. So I actually taught you some things, in my estimation, without you actually knowing it. Okay? I'm going to give you some examples of that. Okay? And when you hear examples that you think ring true, maybe in your own minds you can say, yeah, brilliant on Coach Sawicki's part. No, I couldn't expect any student who took anatomy and physiology from me to be able to recite the path of blood through the circulatory system. That's some of that minutiae I'm talking about. But how many of you remember the caveman challenge? If you don't know what the caveman challenge is, this is what we do in anatomy class. When we study the integumentary system, that's our skin, the students volunteer for this, but for 1 week, we don't use soap, we don't use shampoo, we don't use perfume, we don't use cologne, we don't use antiperspirant. We kind of just go caveman style. And the point kind of for the students is to see how greasy, how stinky, how ugly they would be at the end of a week's worth of this caveman challenge. We post pictures up on the wall and we all talk about how gross we think we look and smell and all that kind of stuff. But consider this. Maybe the caveman challenge wasn't an anatomy experiment. Maybe it was a sociological experiment. Now, if you think about it deeply, if you take off our masks, all the adornments that we have, the perfume, the hair gel, the fancy clothes, and all of that kind of stuff, we're all the same, right? There's no difference between us. We should treat each other as such, valued for who we are as individuals, not for our outward appearance. Each one of you is an individual, but an important part of a community. Don't judge people. Accept them for who they are. Listen deeply to what they have to say. In that same anatomy class, I have students write technical answers to difficult questions. And they're difficult. They're upper division. Any of you who took anatomy, I know you dreaded that red pen when I got it out, because I made those students write and rewrite answers to those questions until they met a standard that was a little atypical for a high school student. Difficult stuff that I was asking them to do. Now, maybe not really the point either. How about this? The ability to receive criticism, not give up or accept a substandard product, and see the job through to the end is an important skill. Dedication to and completion of a difficult task will carry you far in life. Don't settle. Strive for perfection in all that you do. Develop some grit. I taught so many of you in that freshman physical science class. I tried to get an accurate calculation of how many of you I actually saw. I'm guessing about 1,600 students went through my door as freshmen in physical science. Now, in the second section of that section, Physical Science B, we study all about matter. I'm going to ask you some questions here. Get ready. Let's see who remembers the answers to the questions that I asked you over and over and over in that first week of physical science class. Here's some of that minutiae again. Now, remember me saying this. Okay? Pencils down, eyes on me. Question number 1. Anybody out there, if you remember the answers, don't be afraid. Chime in if these guys need help. What do chemists study? Louder. Good. Matter. What is matter? Stuff of the universe. Good job, Weta. Every one of you better have this one. You knew it when you were freshmen. What is the small particle that makes up all matter? Nice. Generally, what small particles make up the atom? Subatomic particles. Specifically, what are the names of the 3 subatomic particles? Protons, neutrons, electrons. I'm so proud of you. So remembering all of these facts. The questions that I just asked weren't really the point. The point was, could you listen? Could you pay attention? Could you become part of the joint learning effort that was going on in the class at that time? And as my best buddy Omar would say, could you read the play? Each member of the graduating class of 2018 became an important part of that joint learning effort. You helped each other when you observed each other's struggle. You lifted each other out of the muck, physically, emotionally, and socially. Without each one of you, the sum of the whole of this class could not add up. Each one of you participate in the process, contribute to the collective society. Don't assume that a single voice doesn't matter. And learn how to read the play. Know a little bit more about this stuff that I just referred to, matter. In teacher speak, we call this the essential question. Remember Democritus and his view of matter in the atom. This was a part of a large lesson that I give in physical science, history of the study of chemistry. Anyway, Democritus' idea was that all matter is made up of these tiny little versions of the larger. And when I did this in class, I said miniature little Sawickis, like this, and little Sawickis, and all of you laugh, laugh, laugh because of the squeaky little voice I made. Not really the point. The point is this. It's not what is matter. The better question, the essential question is what matters? And in my opinion, each one of you do. Every one of you do. Every one of you that I've had the chance of teaching, that I've had the chance of having in my classroom, you matter. You matter deeply to me. As deep can get. And don't take that lightly. You know, that's a big responsibility to shoulder. You all matter. Sense or nonsense? Louder? Perfect. I would be remiss, I think, in this commencement address if I didn't mention another really important part of what I did here at West Jefferson High School. And that was I coached wrestlers for 32 years. So many hours in the practice room, so many hours on the bus, so many miles up and down the road, so many matches, tournaments, duels, so many fond memories, so many heartaches. Coaches tend to use standard cliches when we talk about our sports with athletes. Cliches like sports build character. They promote team spirit. They build work ethic into individuals. Well, I believe that sports do that, but I also believe that wrestling does so much more. It's given me the opportunity to work with amazing coaches and athletes. It's afforded me the opportunity to see society at her best and at her worst. Through it all, some basic facts still ring true in my mind. Facts that I talk to my wrestlers about all the time. Here's an example of those. Wrestling, or when you find the easy part about a wrestling match or a wrestling practice, you let me know. I haven't found one yet, but that's why we do it. Making weight is tough duty. Win and lose with the same dignity. Maybe most important of all to me is, you walk in a wrestling room a boy, you walk out a man. I'd like to thank all the wrestlers who I've had the pleasure of coaching, all the parents who've supported me and my teams. Early in my career, it was kind of all about winning. That's, you compete in sports to win. But years of seasoning has allowed me to see the bigger picture. It is my hope that each wrestler here recognizes that the time they spent on the mat was an accelerated version of the school of hard knocks, both literally and figuratively. Learning life's tough lessons, but more importantly, knowing how to deal with them appropriately. Any of you who have been on my teams, you know exactly what I'm talking about, the life of a wrestler. As I conclude my last lecture, I would like to thank this community for inviting Val and I into your lives, your homes, your churches. We've had the honor of attending your weddings, funerals, missionary farewells, and homecomings, birthdays, trap shoots, squirrel hunts, Sunday coffee and breakfast, goose hunts, branding, fishing trips. The list is endless. But most importantly to me is the fact that you allowed me to be your teacher, your coach, and your mentor. I cherish every moment of the last 32 years I've spent with you in this community. I've come to this realization that this August, my name on the top of room number 7 won't be there anymore. My pickup won't be in the parking lot at 6:30 in the a.m. The crossword that I do every morning will be left undone. But students will be in the building, eager to learn. Teachers will be prepared to teach them. And the halls of West Jeff will fall into their normal rhythm without me. But I promise you this, my thumb will be on her pulse, ever checking the health of the place where I made a career of students to be proud of. Thank you very much.